Welcome, everybody. In just a couple minutes, we're going to finish up chapter 9 of Ecclesiastes. So if you want to turn there, I have a couple announcements before Kendall opens us up in a prayer for the class. On the back board, on the back tables, there are some handouts for tonight's lesson. If you don't have a book or you want one of those, there are some of those back there. But also a couple things coming up. The weekend of Christian social media and digital technology. There's some handouts on those if you want to take that for March. I guess that's the 23rd through the 25th. And then also next quarter for the adults down through teen, we're all together in the auditorium, and that's going to be on a series of prayer, praise, and James. So those two are out there as well. So if you want to look at those things and get those before you leave tonight, and put that on your schedules, and then also just be able to hand those out to others, to good little invitation type things as well, to be able to look at those. So chapter 9 of Ecclesiastes, we're going to get started after we go to God in prayer. So Kendall.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you've given us, and thank you for all your many blessings. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to come out here in the middle of the week and get together with other Christians and study your word and learn more about what you would have us to be as people. Thank you for the teachers and the people who have put time into teaching all of us, the young ones and the old, here today. Please bless them and give them ready recollection of the things that they've got prepared for their individual classes. Please be with us throughout this service, and may everything that we do be to glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. So in looking at just a couple things in review, we're looking at how Solomon's been going through these lessons of life, these experiments that he went through and tried all these different things. Can probably categorize these into several different subcategories. Wilson ended up breaking those into 4 different ones. That's the materialism, the humanism, playboy culture, and then also fatalism. But like Mark had said last week too, you can kind of divide these up several ways. But the whole point is he's been working on these things under the sun and trying all these things of the physical nature, things that he's been going after. And one of the wisest men who ever lived has come to some conclusions about these things. And we're looking at some of those tonight as these. So he came into 4 realities of life, of things that these things are, all this evidence concluded to him that he needed to understand and look at, that, you know, God is in control. God is sovereign. He's the one who holds it all. You know, we're in his hands, if you will. Also, number 2, that death is certain. No one's escaping it. Not the rich, not the poor, not the fast, not the slow. It's going to come to all mankind. It's a certain thing, and with that, it ought to give us a perspective on life. In a couple of ways. One is to enjoy life, and we're going to look a little bit more of that tonight. But also just to understand that with God is in control, as we know now with the revealed word of the New Testament, that there's a judgment day, and we need to live with that perspective. That most of us, I think, here believe that Jesus probably won't come back in our lifetime. That doesn't mean we know that for certain, but as older you get, you kind of figure I'm probably going to die before that happens. You know, but there's going to be a judgment day. We know every knee will bow, and that the death will seal that. And Solomon also talks about that in another point here. But also that without God, man is just evil. Man's heart is evil. The world we live in, borderlines on insane. Just, it's crazy what man will do. And God is with God in control and equalizing those things, it will be a better outcome for us. But then also, within that, point 4 was where there is life, there is hope. So as long as you're alive, there's hope to be able to make those changes, to be able to do whatever you need to do from the New Testament standpoint. But from the Old Testament, it was, for Solomon's time, it was something that, you know, there's life to enjoy if you're alive, you know. So it doesn't all have to be negative, Tim, but, you know, it is pretty fatalistic under the sun, you know, kind of deal. But with those things, that's kind of where we left off. we're going into the next section, so let's just look at this in Ecclesiastes 9, verses 7 through 10. It says, "Go then, eat your bread in happiness, and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Let your clothes be white all the time, and let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the woman whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given to you under the sun. For this is your reward in life and in your toil in which you have labored under the sun. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. For there is no activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol where you are going." So Solomon goes right into here telling us, be happy. These are some of the things that we are able to go. So in looking at this, we're going to go to the questions and just jump right on there. So question 7 says, "Life is like eating corn on the cob. You can be bashfully and neat about it, or you can pick it up with your fingers and bite into it without reservation, with every drop of oil going down your buttery juice going down your chin." So which approach does Solomon recommend, and why? We used to have a function that we'd hold for some of our key customers that was what was called a steak and corn dinner, where we had it outside at the fairgrounds, and we'd get up all this beautiful sweet corn, I mean just bushels of it, and they would have the big cooker pots out, and they would be able to put those out and put them in troughs, so you'd have the whole ear of corn. Then you had drawn butter in big old, what looked like large coffee cans all along, and all the salt and pepper all right there on the table, and nothing but paper towels because it was messy. But you were going to get 3 or 4 of those ears of corn before the night was over because it was so good, too. So Wilson's kind of saying, he's using that as an illustration. You could be real dainty with an ear of corn. Some of you probably like to cut it off the cob. You don't want to eat it off the cob. You don't want to have that juice on your chin, whatever else. But he's looking at this as the way life would live. Which approach does Solomon recommend, and why? Eat that corn sloppy, right? I mean, just go ahead and take life to its fullest, live with it. Yeah. So he's looking at those things and recommending, in a sense, that we need to live this life now, not be bashful, not be, limited in those things. He's saying enjoy them. It's part of our reward, and we're going to see more of that today. So he's looking at getting on again another 4 points that we're going to look about how do we get most out of this life. And his first point coming up is going to be have contentment, to celebrate every moment. That's what he's looking at through there. That's verses 7 and 8 when we're looking at these things. He talked about contentment earlier in chapter 4. You remember we talked about that a little bit, about some of the different things of how certain people were working and going through life and going through different things, and they were disillusioned in their life. They couldn't find happiness because they would never slow down. They never had enough, and they never asked the crucial question of why are they doing all this and for what. And so Solomon's saying, basically in some of these things, celebrate every moment. Have a blast while you last, is the way one preacher put it. That's, again, enjoy life. Don't hold it back. We've talked about contentment before and looking at contentment. What's the definition of contentment? Definition of contentment.
Be happy where you are.
Be happy where you are, right? Yeah, it's a state. No matter where you're at in life, where you're going to, where you're at now, be happy with it. Don't have to be looking at other things of what you need. We're pretty much all blessed, with what we have in certain parts of our life. We're in different stages of our life, but every stage of our life, there seems like there's always something else that we have to shoot for. That's at least what the world's telling us. That's not what Paul said in his writing, right? He said, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. It's good things to have good things, but at the same time, if I don't have those good things and I'm desolate, I'm okay. That's contentment. And he found that in Christ Jesus, as we need to as well. I got a quick letter I'm going to share with you. Our ladies do a great job of doing correspondence courses to the prison to the women in prison. And they've been working with that. And one lady shared a poem with one of our sisters, and it just, I thought it was kind of interesting, and it might fit into this point here in a couple ways. So this is something she calls better or bitter. To be bitter because no one writes you, to be bitter because you seem all alone, bitter because so much love was given and now it's all gone. To be bitter because of the time that will be lost, to be bitter because their life goes on, bitter because life seemed to have stopped for you and you have no idea of what to do. Or to be better, that's what you're going to do, to be better because God has blessed you, better because God is rebuilding you. And now that you have a closer relationship with Him, to be a better Christian, a better person, to be better because your children need you, better because God has a plan for you, and now you're equipped and ready to see it through. This lady's in prison. Kind of sounds like she's figured out contentment while she's there, right? Because a lot of them, and I can tell you from visiting several different prisons when we were working in Ocala a lot of time, a lot of those inmates are bitter, you know, and it's tough to find that contentment. But she's found it in here and turned that portion of her life, which is probably terrible mistakes that she's made, paying the price for it. But she's found contentment now of understanding, boy, I could channel it all this way and live that way, but I'm going to decide to do something differently because God has blessed me. He's given me a time to be isolation to where I can read this stuff all the way around everything. Willie, up here. Mike, please. So pretty impressive to me to see her state. We also saw how Paul and Silas, when they were put in prison, they were rejoicing because they were able to suffer for the cause of Christ. And later on, Paul wrote some of his epistles from the prison, especially we see in Ephesians 6, where he's talked about him being in these chains, but it was for the furtherance of the gospel. So again, having everything we think we always want is not contentment. It's being able to be happy at the state where we are. Good way to say that, Tim. So, Mark?
Yeah, I like what Paul said. I'm content with the circumstances. But he wasn't content with who he was. I think that's an important distinction. Because when he talks about that, he says, I press on. I'm not all I could be, but I'm content with the circumstances. Because the circumstances really have no role to play in me living a Christian life. I can be a great Christian in any circumstance. So it's not really the circumstances. And I like verse 7 of this chapter. It says, God has already accepted your works. And it seems like he's talking to a believer, someone faithful, like, hey, if you're right with God, you got the biggest problem in your life resolved. If you're saved, nothing really matters next to that. I'm saved. I've figured out the big one. Everything else is a little pebble in my shoe. So I don't think he would say this to an unbeliever, go and enjoy life and walk around with your garments white all the time. I think he'd say repent in sackcloth and ashes. So God's accepted your works, I think, is important here.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure about that had to be a believer he said that to, because of, I mean, except like we said 6 times it was said under the sun, you know, is in this chapter. And I don't know that necessarily, I get that, yeah, it'd be easy for us to think that way and go that direction, and certainly as we get older, but I think in this day and time, it's like, the whole message is enjoy life. Get out there and go. You know, your works are approved. So he's not approving evil things. He's saying, you know, be content, love your wife, do these things, enjoy the fruits of your labor. So God does approve those things in our life. And that's, as we saw in some of the past chapters, those are some of the things that maybe all we have in this life. You know, of course, as New Testament Christians, we have more because we have the body of Christ on earth, the kingdom here in the church. But at the same time, there's these things we have in life that we could get very distracted with or bitter about. But again, it's one of these things to where when we have Christ in our lives today, that should put us content in any moment or any place that we're at. So that was his point one, and other things. But what happens in this life, though, we get told these lies. We're told these lies in the ever since we're early in life, and going through college and going through, next fix your career, go, where are you going to do, where are you going to walk up the ladder? One of those lies we looked at earlier was trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's like, they have those things, so we need to have those things. These are some of the things they had, and that it's just a competition. Again, that goes back into that, the one who with the most toys at the end kind of wins. It goes into a lifestyle that we're kind of told that's not contentment. That's jealousy. That's covetousness in some cases. Sometimes we blindly do it and not even know we're doing it. It's just part of, the more we make, the more it takes, and go to the next level there. Another lie is the rat race. We're told that all these things, just by working harder, it's going to bring us happiness. Of achieving this much money, it's going to bring us happiness. Getting this much material things or these other areas, it's going to make us happiness. But it's just prolonging that journey that Solomon was on himself. And the wisest of all men told you, it's all vanity, it's all striving after wind. But yet today we're still being told that rat race is something that we need to look at. So as Tim said there, we need to find contentment where we are and enjoy life better. One of the things that I saw somebody say about the rat race was that it's really more of a conflict between who I am created to be versus who I am tempted to be. And then use these two scriptures here as part of that narrative. So again, those are lies that we're told to try to keep us from being content. Don't fall into those lies. Look above that. Solomon's not saying, necessarily that you're not going to be able to work hard. He says, even when you do something, do it with all your might. So in a sense, that's working hard. But it's where's your mindset on that? We're to be content along the process of doing those things and not looking to try to gain something else out of it. So point 2 he brings up is be committed to your marriage. He's looking at, in verse 9, is it verse 9? Yeah, verse 9 there, to what's it say there as far as enjoy life with the women whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given to you under the sun. For this is your reward in life and in your toil in which you have labored under the sun. Anybody else find it interesting that he didn't say women? He said woman, plural instead of, singular instead of plural. The guy had 1,000 wives, that's 700 wives, 300 concubines. But he's saying, enjoy life with the women whom you love all the days of your fleeting life. So question 9, just weigh in on some of those things. Given the busyness of life, how can I prioritize my spouse? We're working hard to provide for the family men, and some of those things we're doing, taking extra hours if we need to. Wife's raising the kids, doing whatever they are to kind of go through there, going to school, whatever it might be. If you're, after you're married, even still going to those things. How do you prioritize your spouse when all this business of life takes place?
A general rule of thumb, of course, is, Philippians, esteem others better than yourself. So if you can't do that with your spouse, you're in trouble, number 1. And number 2, if you don't know the answer, you're in trouble. But it's a mindset where no matter what I'm doing, once I'm married or, I found my mate, whatever, I have to always be thinking, what do they need? And of course, what can I do to make their life better?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good point. It reminds me of a story of my mom and dad. Were going down the road, and back in the day, now you got bucket seats everywhere, but back in the day you used to have those big long seats, and boyfriend, girlfriend, they would always sit close together, be close to the driver. My mom and dad saw this older couple that were still riding close together, and she goes, "Oh, honey, how come we don't do that anymore?" And he's driving, he said, "I never moved." So that was just a funny story with them. That to her, she was looking at that and said, "Hey, those better days." It does take different things along the way that you have to focus on that. Early on, when we had kids, Jan made it a priority that the kids never came between us, no matter where we were at, sitting or whatever else. she was always sitting next to me, and then the kids would be further down the row or on the next level, next to her. She doesn't do that same thing with the grandkids, so I'm getting to wonder now, But see, that was just one of the things she did early on, we wanted to worship together. That was a priority for her to be together with us on that. Mark, you got a comment?
Yeah, I don't think there's any comparison. Part of me doesn't like to question, because it's like the busyness of life in no way even comes close to the value of a godly mate. I mean, next to your baptism, the person you marry is the most important decision of your life, and it even trumps kids and career and whatever else you do. I like how Solomon puts it on the man. Deuteronomy 24 does the same thing, to give happiness to the wife that he has taken. It's almost like the New Testament puts the tone of the family on the man. You control the tone in that family, whether you have a happy home or not.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's your job to make some of her dreams come true. That's your job, and to help her make it to heaven. And I love this passage because it says you can remain in love for the rest of your life. That's not an impossible task here. And she's your reward. She's your prize. That marriage should be like a miniature Garden of Eden. It should be a refuge.
Yeah.
That's your reward in life. And I don't know, it's just like, how many people have like, well, this is my reward, and I turned it into a disaster. But we have the chance to choose. We choose. And I think we're only kidding ourselves if we think otherwise.
And that's the point, I think, overall, is we can get so busy with other things and can get those things that we can take for granted sometimes. Willie, right down front, Barbara. We can take for granted our spouses sometimes. Some other areas that we could discuss about. Go ahead.
I think it's important to remember that you need to continue to build that relationship with the husband and wife, because after the children are gone, if you've put all your time and energy into them, and then you look around and like, who are you? And you haven't built that relationship so it will continue after the children have moved out and the grandchildren come along. And then if you put your effort and time into that, that's the most important thing. Plus, you're also setting an example for your children of how to treat each other.
Yeah, good point. The empty nest, that those of you who haven't went through that yet, there's going to come a time you kind of look and wonder, kind of like, okay, it's us again, because a lot of those priorities were taken by the kids while they were coming up and everything too. So, just, like Mark had mentioned, Barb mentioned, it's a priority of working it together. I think you go back to point one as well too, and be content with who you are with. That's part of our failure of marriage in today. Most divorces, they say, end because of money issues, or troubles start because of money issues, and that's part of that chasing the rat race or keeping up with the Joneses type thing. But a lot of it's also just temptation or infidelity, and that's something that, I don't know all Solomon's business on his 700 wives and 300 concubines, but for us today, those are everywhere you look, everywhere you turn and see some of these things. There's a call for looking for somebody better, and that's not, again, contentment in that area of your life. So, any other comments or anything else that about the prioritizing your spouse? And this is my spouse, so I gotta tell.
I am your spouse, but I'm not going to tell on you. So a few things that I think are important are the small things. You don't have to take them out to a big dinner every week, or, take them on a huge vacation, or it's the small things that mean the most, like a walk. Come on, let's go for a walk. Just walking side by side sometimes is the best thing to be able to align your minds and align your heart. Keep their love bank filled with good things. Don't just keep taking out. Just just keep filling it up with small things, a little note or, make them a snack or whatever, just small things. And
Cookies?
then
Can you be cookies as
if
part of
you
that list?
can- if you can, just go on a date night every once in a while, even if it's out to the backyard, you don't get a babysitter or whatever, just intentional things that you do, small things.
Thank you. All right, ladies, I love it. Keep talking up. So good.
Well, my husband's not here, so I can brag on him. And I know he feels very passionately that to be the leader of the home is modeled after Jesus leading the church, and that's nothing but service, service, service. So I am spoiled by my husband, rotten, to be honest. And we're in obviously the phase of having little kids. And, a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, they work sun up to sundown. And I think a father should be the same. It's not like you get home and work at 5 and now you're done. When you get home, you jump in right in there with the kids, and Jesus healed and Jesus helped, healed and helped. And that's what makes a great marriage.
It's a team. Yeah, team. Yep, good point.
I've heard some advice before about having a moment during the week where you talk with each other about what you can do with each other and for each other. And make it kind of an event where you do have some lemonade or cookies or something that's special for y'all as you sit and talk about the things that are important to you. So how can I be with you this week? What can I do for you this week? And as you think about the things coming forward, all that starts coming out, and you can really help and see each other and hear each other. So.
Points.
Hi. I think quite a few good things have been said, but I think don't take each other for granted. I think it's so easy, especially if you've been together a long time. I think you take each other for granted, but it's both ways. As ladies can look after the men as much as it is for them. We can run them a hot bath or whatever it is. But I think one piece of advice is never go to bed on an argument. Definitely, if you've got something to say it and make up and go to sleep.
Yep. That was one of my granny's advice too. To never go to bed mad at each other. So Arlene, yeah.
In today's society, one of the things I really want to point out is that men are put down and they're portrayed as buffoons. They're the leaders. We need to honor and respect our leaders. And it amazes me the way people talk to each other, they talk down to each other, they berate one another. That's destructive, that's Satan at his best. And so when we are very courteous and thoughtful, those are the kinds of things that enrich that relationship. And it would never, I had parents my father was very verbally abusive. And just the destruction, I can still hear some of the ways that he would talk to my mother. As I got older, I would say to him, that's my mother you're talking to. You don't talk to her like that. The swearing and the put downs. That hardens the heart. And there's no better wedge to destroy a relationship than that.
Yeah, it takes teamwork, and I love the comment of some of those things, because it's something I think, like you say, we need to have the outlook of it is the most priority, the biggest priority. It is the biggest blessing that we have in our life to be able to have a mate that is a helpmate, if you would, helpmeet, if you would, that can lead us to heaven and kind of be part of our encouragement to get us there. But it takes both sides of it. And sometimes this life can distract us, try to pull us away from those things. Sometimes try to pull us away from each other, even the little things, pulling maybe separate. So again, it's something that we need to work with honor and work with just when we start getting those distractions to make sure that we overcome those and get back our focus 2020 vision on the way it should be. So point 3 we looked at first was to have contentment, celebrate every moment. Point 2 is be committed to your marriage, apply faithfulness. And point 3 here he's saying give life 110%. Have zeal in life. Throw yourself into it. Don't hold anything back. What are you saving it for anyhow? Is kind of his comments here about you're going to save it and what's it going to matter? There's nothing death. Once death's there, you're not going to have time to plan. You're not going to know. You're not going to have the wisdom. It's basically sealed. So live life now. Take that 110% and go with it. So with that, question 6, we need to stop making excuses regarding life. I'm waiting until my house is paid off, until my kids leave for college, until I lose weight, until I get married, until I retire, until summer, until spring, until fall, until winter, till this or that. Solomon advised us to stop waiting to live. And why? Willie, behind you.
Nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. Live your best day today.
Yeah, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow, so we go as best as we can today, right? I heard one illustration talking about, the time and chance. We talked a little bit about that death comes to all, and we don't know when or how. We're not guaranteed different things in life. But he used the example of Princess Diana that we all have heard of or know or whatever, how she was in one of the safest cars ever made. It was a Mercedes 280 sedan, one of the safest cars ever made, had like 8 or 9 onboard systems that were, able to communicate safety things to itself. Had several airbags, front, sides, all the way around. Very safe that way. She was actually sitting in the back seat, which is the safest place to be sitting. But the only thing the safety that car didn't do was fasten your seatbelt for you. And she didn't have her seatbelt fastened, and of course the accident happened. It kind of crumbled from the roof, and I guess her thrown up into the roof, where all those safety devices really weren't in play for, and later on, died from those injuries. But how can that happen? I mean, it's the safest car ever built. It's just, of course, there's probably some conspiracy theories out there on some of those. I see Fiona shaking her head. Yes, she's probably got an inside track when it comes to the English viewpoint on that. But anyhow, it's time and chance is going to happen to us. So, why we're here, we need to live life. We're not going to be able to have it afterwards. Marilyn, did you have?
You often hear people say, I can't wait to such and such. I try to avoid saying I can't wait for this, that, or the other, because you don't even know what will be happening when this, that, or the other is supposed to be happening.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we also delay life waiting on those things too, right?
Yeah, right.
We're not going to have children until we get everything just exactly perfect so that we can afford to bring them into the house and do this or that. Yeah, right. We're not going to get married until we both graduate and can make sure that we have a house first that we can go to. Things in life don't always happen that way. You can be waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and life passes you by in some cases. So, Mark?
Yeah, this can be a tricky question because you could misuse that and be irresponsible with it. Like, on certain things, you might have to wait until your house is paid off. That is, if you're going to do something financial down the road. And I know what the question is saying is that I'll run into people that will say, well, I'm going to wait until things settle down. Well, when's that? Or I can't wait until this year is over. I hope next year is better, and you're kind of wishing your life away. Mm-hmm. Or you're always thinking that you'll have time later. But I think the challenge of wisdom is to know the things that you have to put on hold right now. In our travels, I run into a lot of young people that will say, I want to be doing what you're doing. And I'll say, work 40 years, and then, because if you do it now, you have to work forever. Mm-hmm. And so that question's a little bit tricky of knowing what to pull the trigger on, and now's not the right time to leave because I've got this responsibility, this one. Mm-hmm. So that's not the easiest question to sort out at times.
Yeah, no, and it's not taken away from proper stewardship either, not trying to say that at all, but it is just looking at those excuses sometimes that we put off, and we put off, and we put off, and that day might never come. Charlie?
Yeah, I think one of the points he's trying to make here is whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. Mm-hmm. That means if you're working, be fully engaged. Mm-hmm. Don't be working with your phone in your lap, checking your text messages. If it's not time to work, it's time to be with your spouse, with your wife, with your husband. Be with them. Be committed to them. If it's time to go on a vacation with your family, spend time on vacation. If you have to work, wait until they go to bed. Do it after they've gone to bed. But, I think it's just a matter of being in the moment as opposed to putting off the moment until you think everything's just perfect. Because my experience was things were never just perfect. They were close.
Yeah.
And you figured out how to make it work even when they didn't work out exactly the way you thought they would.
Thank you. So looking at point number 4, he says also is be satisfied with who you are and have a cheerful heart. So again, these applications that he's looking about trying to get most out of life is have that contentment, be committed to your marriage, have the zeal, and be satisfied who we are. Don't be looking to try to be somebody else. We just got to remember that we were made in God's image and also in his likeness in those things. So that should be enough. So, summing these things up, I remember there was a song a while back says, "Don't worry, be happy." And this kind of makes me think about that a little bit on some of these things. Don't stress out, be happy with some of those things too, Tim. So,
Well, we can't all be Barnabas or Paul or Sons of Thunder, but we could be like the woman who made garments for the widows, Lydia, that kind of thing. I think a challenge is, and to me this is, again, a 5-talent person, 1-talent person. God has given gifts to man. So I think our charge, all of us, is to find one thing I can do, and I can do it today, and I can do it tomorrow, and get busy. My concern, well, it's just like in Revelation, there was a church who were, lukewarm. God would rather us be hot or cold. So have some zeal and do something. Even if we make mistakes, do something and try to use what God has given you.
Yeah. Made me think about the lukewarm. We happen to be blessed to be over at Laodicea this last year, summer. And you had Hierapolis, which is the hot springs where you can see, just when you're at Laodicea, you can see the hot springs over here going with all the salt formations and everything else. And then you could see over at Colossae, at the foot of the mountains, the snow. So you had the coldest water ever over there, then you had the hottest water over here in these salt springs, and here you are in Laodicea in between the both. So it's kind of we always get the illustration, it's like, lukewarm coffee or something, but then when you saw that with the way it was geographically, it was pretty cool too. So let's go keep moving here finish out this chapter. Ecclesiastes 11-8 again says, again, I again saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, and the battle is not to the warriors, and neither is bread to the wise, nor wealth to the discerning, for favor of men of ability. For time and chance overtake them all. Moreover, man does not know his time, like fish caught in a treacherous net and birds trapped in a snare. So the sons of man are ensnared at an evil time when it suddenly falls on them. Also this I came to see as wisdom under the sun, and it impressed me. There was a small city with a few men in it, and a great king came to it, surrounded it, and constructed large siege works against it. But there was found in it a poor wise man, and he delivered the city by wisdom. Yet no one remembered that poor man. So I said, wisdom is better than strength, but the wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heeded. The words of the wise heard in quietness are better than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Solomon given us a couple free parables, free proverbs in these things here to finish out this chapter. And so looking at this is, again, we talked about the time and chance over and over in through this chapter, but our end will come suddenly when we least expect it sometimes. It's just, we don't know when that's going to happen. And that's part of this life under the sun. He says that mind will win over muscle, that wisdom will win over strength. That's something that will continue to see. And we could think about that now even in our days. I mean, we look at, our country with the military and, we've got, and other countries have strong militaries too and weapons that we could destroy each other probably 100 times over. But that strength, is nothing without wisdom, right? You need to, what do they call it? Mutual beneficial, well, that would be destruction if you want to go, but what's deterrence, so, our strength is a deterrent to make sure somebody else doesn't do something or whatever. But no, the wisdom is louder than the strength. He says quiet wisdom speaks louder than anything. So what's he mean by that? What's he mean by quiet wisdom? the poor man that told him how to beat the large army. Yeah. See, I'm not sure what I'm looking for on this one, but you're right. He said it wasn't appreciated. It got forgotten, right? I was thinking, there used to be an old saying, the good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you better listen up, And to me, the poor man, they should have been listening to more often, but they went right back to where they were before and forgot about what he had to say. So quiet wisdom speaks louder than anything, and so we should be listening when we see that type of wisdom. And then he says, one person's selfishness can destroy much good. This section where he's looking at kind of like recaps this whole chapter about today matters and to make it happen, to look at those things as part of that going through. So I had one more question in here. I think the question 1 on the outline of lesson 9. Each day we choose our attitude, our priorities, our thinking, our commitment, our faith, our relationships, our values, and our areas of improvement. And guess what? Tomorrow we get to do it all over again. That's why each day matters. It's too late for yesterday. You can depend on tomorrow. You can't depend on tomorrow. You have one day today. It matters. So discuss the principle that you will never change your life until you change what you do daily. So what about that? You agree with that? Yes or no? Do you do that? Yes or no? Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
As a teacher with the little ones, we see this all the time. We're trying to get the parents to practice stuff at home. And just had this conversation recently. They had done homework for 2 nights in a row and wanted to know why their test score had not improved from last week. And it was the conversation of it's that repetition. It's something that you see that probably, they talk about it with dieting and things like that. But it's so evident when you're working with small kids, because they'll do something one time and then they'll be like, why isn't it working? It's like, well, that we've got to, but adults are just as guilty of it. But it's the idea of when you've walked through it every day that I'm like, okay, they're not gonna, we're not writing a dissertation today. We need to practice writing A, B, C, D, and then we'll move to the next letter. And it's the same kind of concept. I think sometimes we want this big change, and I don't know about everybody else. I know for me personally, every time I've tried to do like a huge, I'm going to do all these things, that never happens. But doing just a little bit along and along will actually make the change.
Yeah, so we're not too far from January 1st, which is, New Year's resolution. So how's that working out for you, right? They usually say most people lose their New Year's resolutions by January 31st. And that's why there's been a trend, a lot of cases, to instead of looking at trying just to fix all these things, fix yourself. That's where you see some of these places, and some groups even have went to the one-word concept. I think Edwin did that a few years back, of looking at one word per year. But that one word is something you can work on daily yourself, whether that's discipline, whether that's, kindness, whatever it might be. You pick a word for you. But then every day of the year, you look at trying to work at that. Not necessarily, should you lose weight? Maybe, if you're like me. But if, there's those things. But those are things that, as soon as I see you guys, these good sisters, put out a spread, I'm eating. That's just the way it is. But, when it comes to those other things, I can work on those things daily and do those things too. I saw one more thing over here, sorry.
Well, they say dress for success. I don't know if it's an urban myth. I heard a story of an attorney in Tampa somewhere. He had a single office. He had one secretary. He never really went out anywhere. He just worked from his office. But every day he dressed to the nines, full suit, every day, even though he hardly saw anybody ever. But just having that suit on made him think about who he was. So there are many references in the Bible for us to adorn ourselves, put on Christ. Things are mantles. So I think every day if we just think, okay, who am I? What am I going to wear today? I'm wearing Christ today, and so maybe that'll help.
Yeah, good point. Solomon even says here, to put on white garments. And in that day, it probably meant more joyful garments than it did, like we take it to the New Testament as spiritual type garments. But and anoint your head with oils. We think about the kings got head anointed, but they did that when it was like dress up time, kind of thing too. So, so those are things that we're not to go around mopey and kind of, looking like we don't care, but to kind of to enjoy life while we have it. So today matters. Do something with it. Work on yourself first, and part of those suggestions will work as well as the rest of y'all too. Thank you very much for your kind words and good comments. Bill, you got